Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today on this brief presentation about diverse employee considerations, a shift in the definition of organizational diversity. My name is Ashley MacArthur, and I am a student at the University of West Florida. Essentially, diversity is on the rise in the United States, and it is increasing at a more rapid rate than ever before. There is an increase in people entering the country and its workforce. People are entering from different regions and geographic locations. But that is not all. We now have global citizens who live remotely, people who work within the United States that are not necessarily living within the United States. Additionally, more diverse people are entering the workforce itself. We're seeing an influx of people from different socioeconomic statuses, different races, different genders, people who speak different languages, and a multitude of other diversity factors. This trend began in the 1970s when women began to enter the workforce at a more rapid rate than ever. We also have a larger number of people who are self-identifying. People feel more free in the workplace and therefore have an easier time sharing things about themselves. And finally, diversity affects all organizations. They impact organizational culture, conflict, both positive and negative, efficiency, effectiveness, and overall enjoyment and morale in the workplace. The title of this presentation should give you an idea where this is going, but just in case, now we will talk about the shift in the definition of diversity. Prior to 2016, diversity was based largely on culture, gender, age, and religion. We tended to focus on surface-level features, things that were easily identifiable upon first looking at another person. The main focus of this was demographic, which was represented in things such as equal employment hirings. However, in 2016, this diversity definition began to shift. Any personal identifying feature began to be described as an aspect of diversity. This includes things that we don't necessarily associate with diversity because of our past focus on culture and visible features. We now consider things such as political affiliation, our personality types, sexual orientations, academic areas of study, disorders in mental health, and a number of other features. Essentially, any personal identifying feature is now a diversity factor. And we're able to focus on those subsurface features and attributes that were previously ignored or not shared. Actual features rather than perceived features are also a focus. In the past, we tended to perceive someone's socioeconomic status. Now, we gain the real information rather than making assumptions based on someone's physical appearance. I shall now talk with you about past and current trends. As I mentioned previously, equal employment opportunity was a big step for the previous definition of diversity. People began to hire around the early 2000s, people who had different visible features. Again, this was focused more on demographics, so things such as race, age, and gender. We tended to value culture as the sole source of diversity, and the definition of diversity was actually culture itself. Current trends, which began to appear as early as 2012 and are active today, include things such as mandatory and optional diversity trainings. However, these do not adequately meet the needs and goals of diverse organizations. There are also things such as diversity education, which occurs largely in higher academic settings, as well as diversity hirings and, again, EEO. I mentioned that these previous practices and even our current ones are not adequately addressing diversity. So here are a few new best practices sourced from additional research as well as real-world experience. The first one is to value diversity. This is more than simply having or managing diversity in your organization. People can have diversity in their organization and do nothing with it. This is largely the result of EEO and diversity hirings. Managing diversity is seen through handling of conflict and conflict resolution. We're not talking about positive conflict that results in new situations, ideas, and experiences. Rather, we're referring to the more negative conflict. Valuing diversity occurs by putting the right people in the right places. This includes things like providing people tasks that match their skills. Valuing diversity occurs when we value individuality but work with cohesion. The result is individuality coupled with unity. Another best practice is tolerance as acceptance and civility. Validation is sacrificing your personal beliefs to align with those of another person's. That self-sacrifice is not seen as a positive thing. Coexistence is more of a grit your teeth and bear it approach, so to speak. This is where people unpleasantly exist with one another in the workplace. However, tolerance as acceptance and civility focuses on respectful interactions and acceptance of differences. The final best practice is a harmonic workplace atmosphere. This is seen largely in East Asian organizations and is yet to make a large appearance in the United States. The core organizational values rather than individual values are emphasized. An organizational culture is created where unity exists while maintaining individuality. Though these best practices are only scratching the surface, there is much need for future work and research in this area. This shift in the definition of diversity is only the beginning. There is so much more for people in organizational settings to do in theory and in practice to bridge the gap between our past and current acts and what needs to be done in the future to adequately address diversity in organizational settings. This concludes my presentation on organizational diversity and the shift of the definition of diversity in organizational settings. The following pages include references. Please pause at your convenience, and thank you very much for your time.